Hello and a warm welcome to everyone. This is Lunch with Bryom. My name is Anna Lenäs and I run Bryom. It's a space for sustainable health and wellness where it's easier for you to care for your whole self, both mentally and physically and emotionally and relationally and spiritually. And Lunch with Bryom is our recurring live format where we invite amazing speakers who talk about stuff that we want to learn about, stuff that we think will help you feel better and to connect with yourself on a deeper level. And today I've invited Andrea Sommer, who has an incredible journey behind her. She has worked as a personal trainer with nutrition and meditation, but when she discovered somatics and breathwork, that's when everything clicked into place. So today she works with the integration of the masculine and the feminine, embodiment and nervous system regulation for self-led leadership and presence. She guides people through the body, not to become calmer, but to become more grounded, present, self-led in their ability to meet others. So over the next 30 to 40 minutes, Andrea will share why people-pleasing is not a character issue, but a nervous system issue. And this is completely fascinating for me because I always thought it was a character issue. So maybe I can fix it and how you can actually change it. And we will save time for some questions. You can type them in the chat whenever you feel like, or you can leave them for the end when we'll do a Q&A. So welcome, Andrea. The stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here and talk about this topic about people pleasing and how that is not a character trait, not a personality trait, but actually a nervous system issue that we say. There are so many things that we believe is a character trait, that we believe is part of our personality, that is in fact a trauma response, something that we've been conditioned into, something that is coming from an experience that we've had in our childhood, and something that we have lived with for majority of our lives, and therefore we have attached it to our identity and we have made it a part of who we are. And it might be something that we don't believe is fixable or changeable, but a lot of these things, including people pleasing, is actually something that we can heal through the work that we do on ourselves, through increasing the capacity, through nervous system regulation, and through the inner work. But I'm going to start this by giving a little more information about me and who I am and what I do. And so my name is Andrea Sommer, and I have worked a very long time with health, physical health, mental health, emotional health. And I really started to understand the importance of somatic work and nervous system work when I was on my own healing journey, because I felt like I started to have this awareness around my patterns and how I showed up in the world, how I showed up for myself, how I showed up in relationships, how I showed up in work. And as I started to uncover this, there was almost this blockage around what I could change. I had tried therapy. I had gotten into meditation. And I always say that there's levels to our healing and our growth and our expansion and our consciousness, really. And the first step is our conscious mind. It's the awareness. It's the ability to reflect on who am I? How am I responding? How am I showing up? And then there's actually an integration process. And the integration process is when we actually start to do the work and we actually start using these tools and we actually start to see this change. But what happens is that our subconscious and our somatic traumas and wounds that live inside our bodies, they are often so strong that they will pull us back into familiar patterns, because what our human brain and our subconscious and our nervous system, until we start working with it and heal it, wants is to keep us in the familiar. It wants to keep us safe. And it will try to retract us back to these old patterns until we reach a level of embodiment. And embodiment is the level where we have done the work and we have shifted our identity on a somatic level, on a nervous system level, on a cellular level, where we do not go back to our old patterns. We are embodying this new version of us. And it doesn't mean that we are these perfectly healed humans that never mess up, that never react, that never ever retract an old pattern. But we are very quick to notice if that happens. And it's all about how we come back to alignment and how we catch ourselves in real time. And those moments of triggers will be a lot fewer. And there will be shifts where you won't be able to recognize yourself anymore. It's almost impossible to go back to the old you. And that's where we want to go to when we're working on ourselves and working on our shifts, when we want to shift our reality outside of ourselves, and when we want to shift who we actually are. And so today we're going to move into one of the most common patterns, that is people pleasing. So what is actually people pleasing? People pleasing looks like saying yes when you mean no. It means that we're avoiding conflict. It might mean that we over-explain ourselves, we overgive, we silence ourselves. And what it can feel like in the body, because we want to also connect to the feelings, the emotions, what's happening somatically in our nervous system. It might feel like a tight chest. It feels like a contraction in our body because something doesn't feel safe. There's a fear, whether that is of disappointing someone, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of not being liked, not being loved. We feel this hyper responsibility to show up for others. And this is such a common thing. If you feel like this is me, like I struggle with this, just know that you are not alone. And what's so interesting about this is that we might feel like it is a part of who we are. And often in society, some of these traits are even glorified. Especially for women, we are often praised when we are nurturing and we are caretaking and we are making sure that everyone is okay. And that is in our biology, to take care of other people and want to take care of other people, want to show up. But what happens is that when we do it at the cost of our own well-being, when we do it at the cost of our truth, our authenticity, it's not about being nice. It's actually about self-abandonment. And we will feel that in our bodies. We will feel that inside of ourselves when in any way we don't show up in our truth, when we don't speak our truth, when we override our boundaries, when there is something that feels like a no and we still say yes. And What this actually is nervous system responses. So people pleasing, we have different kind of nervous system responses. You might have heard of some of them: fight or flight, being highly activated, being in survival. There's freeze. That's another thing that we sometimes can think is a character flaw or a personality, to maybe procrastinate a lot, or being a perfectionist, or being lazy. And we think that it's because we might lack discipline, or we think that we're not getting things done because we're a perfectionist, when in fact it is a freeze response. It is a fawn response. And people pleasing is actually a fawn response. And fawn means that we feel like we have to overextend ourselves. We feel like we have to suppress our truth because our nervous system doesn't feel safe doing so. It doesn't feel safe when you express yourself, when you have strong boundaries. And that is because oftentimes in our childhood, it didn't feel safe. When we grow up in homes where maybe love was conditional, where there was a lot of conflict, a lot of chaos, where we felt like we might have been the emotional caretaker for our parents, so one or both parents, we feel like we had to protect ourselves and we had to adapt in certain ways for it to feel safe. So really, again, it's not a weakness. It is, in fact, and was a survival strategy. And that is because when we are little children, we actually need to stay connected to our parents and our caregivers to survive. So we are choosing attachment over authenticity. But as we grow up and we are adults, we don't really need anyone else to survive. That is what it might feel like. And not to say that we don't need other people. We are relational beings and we need connection. We need co-regulation. We need relationships. But the nervous system response that says, if I don't change who I am, if I don't show up as this smaller version of myself, I won't survive. And that's literally the response that we feel in our bodies. And it might be so intense. The fear might be so intense. If you resonate with this, if you feel like, okay, this is me, I know what it feels like. It feels really intense. It feels like life or death, when in fact, it's not. And so, again, some ways, and you can start reflecting on this as well, how it shows up in your life. And it's very obvious in both our workplace, how we show up at work, whether we have our own business or we are working somewhere. It also shows up in our relationships. And again, we say yes when we mean no. We over-explain, we suppress our truth, we might tolerate misalignment or unfair treatment or bad behavior, and we might avoid hard conversations. We avoid conflict. We might take on too much. This is often what leads to burnout, because there's a fear to say no. There's a fear to honor our boundaries. And there might be a blockage around actually asking for what we need and instead overperforming because we're afraid of being seen as difficult. And it is so deeply ingrained in how we grew up, not only in our family, in our closest family, but our school systems. There can be little things. It doesn't have to mean that you had a big trauma. There's big traumas, small traumas, big T's, little T's. It can be something so easy or small, like there was something that happened in school when you grew up and something made you really uncomfortable when you spoke up in front of everyone in class. There was a moment where you felt like you were judged or laughed at or rejected. And all these little things create this fear response within us that it's not safe to do it again. Whatever you did, don't ever repeat this because this will lead to pain. And our subconscious and our nervous system will do everything that it can to not experience pain ever again. It will register every little thing that we went through growing up, and it will cultivate these protective parts. So again, it's a survival strategy. Your nervous system is trying to protect you from pain. And it's the crazy paradox of life, right? We live our lives often subconsciously doing everything that we can to avoid pain that in fact leads to suffering. Because what suffering is when we resist and we try to control our circumstances and we suppress our authenticity. We suppress our truth. And I talk about this all the time, that really the real journey of life, of healing, of coming back to self is about unlearning and about unraveling these protective parts to understand and teach our system that we don't need them anymore. We all have our inner child that lives within us. And that is often the inner child that runs the show, that feels the fear of, I can't do this. I can't say no. I can't speak my truth. I can't say what I really think because that's going to cause me pain. They're going to judge me. They're going to reject me. And so working with these inner parts and understanding that, okay, I'm safe. It's okay. It's okay if no one likes me or if someone rejects me. I'll survive. I'll be okay. And something that's huge part of the nervous system and also of people pleasing itself is lack of boundaries. And again, most people think that boundaries are about communication and that it is a communication issue, that we have to be better at communicating. But boundaries is part of your nervous system, and especially the ability to sustain them. Because a boundary is not saying, only this is not working for me. That is speaking your truth, and that is speaking a boundary. But what most people struggle with is to actually reinforce the boundary. So if someone is treating us poorly, for example, and we voice, which also takes courage, by the way, because that's also usually when our nervous system goes, oh, I can't even say this. It feels unsafe to express this. But to actually, if that occurs again, to actually change something, that is when it is so obvious that it is something that has to do with the nervous system and what we can call oftentimes an anxious attachment, because we care so much about the attachment to the person or the job that we're at that maybe we have said, I can't do this anymore. This is draining me. This is burning me out. And I can't do it anymore. And then the first step is obviously to voice that, to communicate that, whether that is in a relationship or that is at a workplace or to ourselves, if we're our own boss, right? If we're entrepreneurs. But then to actually do something about it also requires courage, because what kicks in again is that nervous system response that if I lose this attachment, if I choose my authenticity of what I know to be right, what feels right to me, my intuition of, okay, this is not really working for me anymore. My mental, my physical, my emotional health is being affected by this. Actually reinforcing that boundary and removing ourselves is one of the hardest things that we can do. And understanding that that again has to do with our ability to regulate. And nervous system regulation is not about calming ourselves down. It is in certain situations, and I will go into the micro moments of practices that we can do in real time, but really it's our capacity to hold pain. And it's really about emotional intelligence, because this goes beyond what we know on a mind level. It happens, the change happens in the body. Because we've all had these experiences when something happens. It could be something traumatic, something scary, something that puts us in a fight or flight, survival, or maybe a freeze. We cannot think clearly. It's really hard to change our mind when we are in freeze, fawn, fight, or flight. A lot of people have experienced anxiety, for example. And we think that anxiety is overthinking. And it is. Oftentimes it is maybe replaying things in our mind from the past. It's worrying about the future. We're not being present. We're not in the present moment when we are experiencing anxiety. But what so many people try to do is they try to get out of it in a mind level, when in fact it is a bodily response. It is your nervous system. And so the importance of regulating that response so that we actually can change our thoughts. I call it a bottom up, top to bottom approach. We often think that we have to work from top to bottom, so mind to body, but they work together. And oftentimes when we feel dysregulated, whatever we're trying to solve on a mind level won't click. Nothing will change until we actually slow down our breath, come back into the body. Because when we come back into the body, that's when we feel the clarity. That's when we can connect to our intuition. That's when we can connect to our truth of, okay, what feels right to me? Let me respond from that state. Same thing when we're triggered. And a trigger is often a connection to a past experience, right? We experience something maybe in our childhood, and something in our present moment reminds us of that. But the present moment itself isn't the biggest threat. It just activates something within our nervous system that will create this response that there's a threat, there's danger. But when we can pause, when we can breathe, when we come back into our body, we can access this clarity. and we can be present, and we can feel, okay, what is my boundary here? And that is what changes everything. And so when we talk about reacting versus responding, when we are reacting, we are in a dysregulated state. We've all felt this when we're frustrated or something happens and we feel we are dysregulated and we can't help ourselves but to say something that we're like, why did I say that? Or we overreact, right? That is the overreaction. And we can know this in the small ways of how when we haven't gotten proper sleep, we're really, really tired. We are more prone to reacting because we are dysregulated. We need sleep to be regulated. It's such a big part of our emotional well-being, right? And the difference between responding. So in those moments, being able to respond, that is self-mastery. That is leadership. And that is regulation. So leadership, both self-leadership and leading other people, it requires our emotional capacity. It requires presence under pressure, because all of this doesn't mean that we never experience overwhelm, that we never experience fear, that we never experience discomfort, but our tolerance for that discomfort, for vulnerability, our capacity to hold that is bigger. Because when we talk about increasing our capacity, we are increasing the threshold to hold uncomfortable emotions. I use the example of going to the gym, because we go to the gym and we perform exercises and there's a discomfort, but we know that it leads to growth, right? We know that for a fact. We have to break down our muscles in order for them to grow. And we embrace that pain. Not everyone, but it's usually easier to embrace that pain because we know. But when it comes to uncomfortable situations, when it comes to people pleasing, when it comes to speaking our truth, when it comes to having boundaries, we resist it with every cell in our body. And we have to increase the capacity to hold that discomfort. And so when we talk about embodied leadership, we are looking at someone who actually is grounded in who they are, that knows who they are, that can stand for who they are, their morals, their values, what they believe in, without dimming down, without shrinking to please others. As a leader, we have a responsibility to create spaces that are safe, that are supportive, that are empowering. And that starts with creating that space within ourselves. We can feel the difference, which also, by the way, is our nervous system connecting. Our nervous system is creating this electromagnetic field, a frequency in which we feel each other. That's why we co-regulate, right? That's why we feel energy before someone even speaks. We can feel what their intention is. We can feel how they're feeling. This is our nervous system connecting with each other. And so we can feel when someone leads from embodied presence. not performing confidence, not being overly dominant or trying to control everyone and everything around them, but actually is safe within themselves. Actually knows that, okay, this is me. This is what I believe in. This is my vision for myself. If you have a team, this is the vision I have for the team. This is what I have a vision for what we're creating. And inviting people around to feel safe through that. Not trying to please them, but being open, being curious. Everything that we are expressing in relationship with others is a reflection of the capacity we have created within ourselves. And so people pleasing, for example, it's often a fear of judgment. When we are afraid of judgment, we are judging ourselves. There are things that people can say about you that will totally just, you'll brush it off. You won't even take offense because you don't even think about that. There is nothing in you that believes that about yourself. But if someone says something about something that you already believe to be true about yourself, something that you already judge yourself for, that will hurt. So everything around you is always a mirror. And so if you resonate with this, you can ask yourself, what is the fear about? What do I fear? Is it rejection? Is it judgment? Is it not being liked? People think I'm stupid. Being curious about these beliefs that are underneath everything. And asking yourself, where are you still choosing safety over truth? And what would change in your life if you started to show up differently? If you felt safe in your body to speak your truth, to stop people pleasing. One of the most important questions to ask ourselves is, what is it costing me? Oftentimes we can see that people pleasing cost us a lot. It cost us our mental, emotional, physical health, because we keep saying yes when our bodies are saying no. That leads to burnout, especially in the workplace. Taking on too many tasks, doing things that doesn't feel good, saying yes when we want to say no. And suppressing our truth has a bigger impact on our physical health than we actually know and understand. They say that the biggest factor that contributes to autoimmune diseases in women, because mostly women deal with autoimmune diseases, and that's for a reason, is suppressed rage, suppressed anger. That comes from all the boundaries that were silenced. How many times in your life did you say yes when you meant no? It stays in your body. It affects your body. Your body keeps the score. And so what is it costing you? And you not sharing who you are, you're not sharing your ideas, your dreams, your visions, your desires, because you're scared of what people might think. That is costing you your dream life. It's costing you not receiving and experiencing your desires in life. That's a pretty big cost. Or people pleasing in relationships, romantic friendships, workplace, when there's mistreatment. But you want to make sure that everyone else is okay. You're putting everyone else first. But you're abandoning yourself. Are you staying in misaligned friendships or relationships that is actually draining your energy, taking away your peace, your happiness, just because your nervous system is keeping you in fawn, keeping you people pleasing? And it often has to do with that we have a lot of empathy. We care about other people. There's kindness. And that's where it's glorified a lot of the times, because it's viewed as something beautiful to just be kind. But you don't lose your kindness because you stop people pleasing. You don't lose your empathy because you have boundaries. You're actually just standing in your authenticity. And what's so beautiful is that we'll also see life starting to arrange itself around this new frequency, this new regulation in our nervous system. Things may fall away, but they were never meant for you anyways. The opportunities that we're clinging onto that doesn't feel right, because our gut knows, our intuition knows what is for us. And then we start negotiating because there's fear. And so we want to say that people pleasing is selfless, right? But it's often not so much about being nice. It's about fear. So we're trying to keep ourselves safe. And boundaries are never about the other person. It's never about rejection. It's about protection, protecting ourselves, protecting our energy. And that's the most valuable currency that you have. And so just taking a moment and reflecting on, if you're people pleasing, how does that show up in your life? Where is it coming from? And what is it costing you? So when we talk about how we can regulate, some practical tips. What often triggers people pleasing is when there's conflict, when there's disapproval, maybe there's a silence, maybe there's this opportunity to speak up. There is this opportunity for visibility, to be seen. There's something that, again, reminds us of past experiences when these things weren't safe. So depending on what we've been through and how we've experienced certain things, the bracing in our body and how our body and our nervous system will respond in certain situation is different. That is why we are literally experiencing life out of our nervous system, and two people that are in the same room at the same time having the same experience are having totally different experiences. Because it's not about the external environment at all. Someone can go into a room full of people and immediately feel overstimulated and feel anxious because it doesn't feel safe to the nervous system. It might be because we're dysregulated that day and our nervous system is extra sensitive, or that situation may trigger something like lack of control or an experiences that we've had. And another person might be completely unbothered. but it's about what triggers you. It doesn't really matter how anyone else is experiencing life or certain situations. It's about how you experience life and how you want to experience life and what the gap is here. And so when we are experiencing this people-pleasing tendencies, let's say there's a conflict and we really, really want to say this to this person. It's something that we've been thinking about for a long time, that we want to bring up because it's something that will support us and support the relationship. Your body's going to contract. Your nervous system is going to go, this is not safe. This does not feel good. This is a threat. This is danger. I'm going to die. And so what can we do in that moment? And this goes for any type of conflict, by the way. No matter if you're a people pleaser or not, our emotional capacity, there will be triggers throughout our lives, throughout our relationship. Like I said, they're our biggest mirror. Pausing, allowing yourself to pause. What do you do in this moment? What do you feel around you? Focus on your senses. So you can feel your feet. You can feel yourself ground. If you have a bigger opportunity for a bigger pause, you can go out, you can put your feet in the grass, you can ground. But if you just have a moment, feel. Slow down your exhale. So oftentimes when we're contracted, we stop breathing and we hold our breath. Just bringing the attention to, okay, I'm safe. Let me breathe. Slow exhales, when our exhales are longer than our inhales, that's when we trigger a parasympathetic nervous system and we're triggering our rest and digest. It's safe. And just name what's happening in your body. Okay, I'm feeling a contraction in my belly. I'm feeling a closeness in my chest. When we're naming it, we're disconnecting from it taking over our entire presence. It loses its power because it feels like the walls are closing in and everything is so narrowed down. When we can zoom out and we can just like, okay, I'm not anxious. I'm experiencing some anxiety, some fear. And then choosing to respond differently. So pausing, noticing, and choosing differently. Because most likely what also happens is it's going to take some time before you feel comfortable speaking your truth. But every time you choose out of presence, that's a win. Every micro moment matters. And so when we talk about creating sustainable change, in the moment regulation will help you. But again, people pleasing is not a character trait or personality trait, but it doesn't only live in these moments of stress. It's your nervous system default mode to be in. It often leads in fawn, in survival. And so noticing that, okay, I'm going to be so aware of every time that I do this, every time I lean into this, but working with your nervous system on a daily to create a baseline of regulation is super, super important, because you will feel the shift. Like what I mentioned in the beginning, when there's an embodiment, you're not going to feel the need to people please anymore. You're going to notice the difference of how you have changed your baseline because you have worked with your patterns. You have worked with the root of why you're actually people pleasing. That is about actually rewiring your system. So your nervous system has to learn on a somatic level that connection doesn't require self-abandonment. Conflict does not mean danger. Your needs, speaking your needs, won't threaten your belonging. And so it all happens through repeating somatic experiences of safety. Not only in moments where you tend to lean into more of the people pleasing, but in your everyday life. It happens through co-regulation. So in your relationships, choosing relationships and friendships that make you feel safe. Notice also, where am I in these friendships and in this relationship because I really want to, because they're aligned with my truth, or am I just staying in them because I'm people pleasing, because I don't want to hurt anyone? And a lot of relationships and friendships can improve from actually communicating our needs. So oftentimes with people pleasing too and having boundaries, we feel like we're doing people a disservice. Like we don't want to hurt their feelings. But if you don't express your boundaries, I like to talk about this as a mindset shift to trick our brain, because we're already tricking our brain that something is dangerous. You're robbing them of the opportunity to grow. So, for example, if someone is not treating you well, someone has a pattern of bad behavior, you are robbing them the opportunity to be a mirror for them and say, hey, this is not okay for me. I'm putting up a boundary. They might go, oh my God, I didn't even know. I didn't even realize this. I'm so sorry. Let me work on this. So many relationships and friendships have the opportunity to improve, but because of lack of communication, because of fear of conflict, there's no opportunity for it. And so really going back to the foundation of why am I so afraid? So the root is really the wound and the subconscious core beliefs that we have, that if I'm fully myself, I will lose the connection. I'm only worthy if I'm liked, loved, or chosen. That's why we overwork. That's why we overprove ourselves in our relationships, at our job, because that's the core belief. That's the core wound. That's where the healing lies. And so when we can actually heal this, our boundaries are going to feel more natural. Showing up in our truth and our authenticity is going to feel safer. Our ability to lead is going to feel embodied. It's not performative. It allows for presence, for deeper connection with other people, and we stop people pleasing. And we don't feel the need for it anymore. And that is true freedom. True freedom lies in showing up as our authentic selves, coming back to truth, unlearning everything else. And so this is how we become more embodied. This is how we become more embodied leaders, because we stop over-explaining, we stop chasing approval, we stop shrinking or dominating, and we lead with this grounded presence. That's what people trust. That's what you feel. Like I said, you feel when someone's embodied, because we trust ourselves. Because when we have this fear that I will be rejected or judged or abandoned if I speak my truth, we don't trust our ability to hold that if that happens. We can't control it. People pleasing is about trying to control others. It's a form of manipulation, because we are manipulating who we are for people to like us, for people to stay in our lives. And it's not with the intent to hurt, but we do self-abandon. and we change who we are to control the outcome. When the truth is, you cannot control anything. You cannot control how people feel about you. And the more you trust that, the more you trust your ability that if that happens, if people leave, if people reject you, at least you know it's not for you. They're not for you. There's something greater there. You're living your truth. You're living in your freedom. You're authentic to you. You stop abandoning yourself. Your whole life will change. Everything is going to align. So it is so much bigger than we actually think, and how people pleasing are affecting our lives and ourselves. And it's self-sabotage. And the work lies in nervous system regulation, creating that capacity for yourself. Learn about yourself, understand, be curious. Why am I doing this? I want to change that because, again, what is it costing me? And what's on the other side of that? And that is the power. That's only one part about nervous system regulation. This is one pattern. One pattern. It's really, really, really common. We all do it. In some way, have all done it. So again, this won't just change how you lead at work. It changes how you show up in every area of your life, your relationships, your boundaries and everything, how you lead yourself in life. Because every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. Every time you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. Make sure you're saying yes to yourself. And then everything else will fall into place. And so regulation, nervous system regulation is not just a practice. There are the practices that will help you, but it's the foundation in which you live your life. Okay. That's all I have for you right now. You let me know if there's any questions.
Well, thank you. I realized I was muted because I, when it's technical stuff, you can never be too sure. This was amazing. Thank you, Andrea. You hit my heart a few times, so I have to go meditate now.
I love that.
And breathe.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any questions in the chat yet, so I'll take the opportunity to ask some for myself. So one thing that kept coming up, it's like, so something can be like guilt, and it can be, I completely understand the whole being not regulated now. But what when it's like also part of your values, like when those are kind of also at play? So like, for example, I have a value that I value my family a lot, but I feel guilty if I don't do stuff. So the guilt is kind of coming from my value more than it's coming from them. How do I do it then?
So you mean that you value, let me see if I understand this correct. You mean that you value them so much that that's why the people pleasing is present?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I think it doesn't take away the value for them. I think that we have to trust that when we pour into ourselves, when we are investing in our well-being so that we are the best version of ourselves for us, for our parents, our siblings, our friends, our children, we are also more for them. When we are giving out of an empty cup and we feel drained, they don't get the best version of us.
That's very true. I like that way of seeing it.
Yeah. So like it's coming back. It's not like we're removing ourselves completely. It's just saying, I need a moment to recharge. I need a moment to fill my cup up, because that's how I can be more loving. That's how I can be more understanding. That's how I can be more present. Because what really matters is that presence and that connection. Is like when we're with someone, if I'm somewhere else and I'm not with you, you would rather not have me there than just like this connected version of me. And so if I would say, you know what, I feel a little scattered, I think I just need to take a moment and be with myself and breathe. Can we do this again tomorrow? You will probably appreciate that more.
Yeah.
So sometimes we have this idea that people will take offense over things, when it's like the people that love you and that actually are for you, they will understand and respect your value that you have for yourself. And if they don't respect that, it's because they don't respect that within themselves. People that don't accept your boundaries, they are not people that have boundaries themselves a lot of the times, because people that understand that and understand the value of that will respect you for it.
Yeah, that's very true. But it was also interesting because I when I listened, I could see like, oh, in these areas I've actually learned this, and oh, in these areas I still have a way to go. So it was good also to get like words on stuff. So when you start doing this work, like with like clients you have and stuff, like how long does it take until they start seeing results?
Very different. Depending on your devotion to the change that you're trying to make. It's about, and I say again, it's not a destination. We want it to be so badly, but it's not about arriving at a perfectly healed place. It's about noticing. If you have a conflict, let's say with a partner, and you were able to pause and say, hey, this is my boundary, this is not working for me, versus going into the fawn response of not saying anything or trying to please your partner, that is a win. And I think people forget to celebrate those moments that are actually like that. It's a shift. That's a moment of growth. That's a moment of healing. And so if someone does that after a week, that's change. And that it's about doing it again and again and again and sustain it. So change can be instant. Change can be, oh my God, I just had this realization. Tomorrow, I'm going to speak my truth. And that can happen so quickly. So it's all about how we measure change and the expectations we have on it.
Yeah. And I also guess it kind of depends a bit on also how regulated you are when you start. Like, do you have the space to actually discover it in the moment, or are you like just running so fast that it takes you until the day after to even realize that it happened? Then it might take longer. Yeah.
How much are you in survival? If you are more in your survival on a day-to-day and you're constantly dysregulated, it probably will take longer than if you actually, and I think that's the thing. People need to be devotional about their change. It's sometimes it requires you to move differently and to move things around and change your priorities. And that's the hard part about people pleasing, because then it's like, I'm not going to be able to have the capacity to maybe see friends or do this like I've been running around doing this whole time. That's the healing of saying, no, this is time for me to change behavior and my patterns that are not good for me, that are trying to protect me, but it's not working anymore.
Yeah, very true. So I think we're gonna round off. Thank you so much for being here and teaching us this. And people can follow you. You're Andrea Sommer on LinkedIn. You're at Andrea Sommer on Instagram. You have your website, andreasommer.com. So, as long as you remember her name, you'll find her. Yeah, and also follow Briom. We are still mostly in Swedish, but that will change. So, follow us too. And yeah, we will let you know when well, you will understand when you start understanding stuff, and then we're not only in Swedish. So awesome. In 2 weeks, we're gonna talk Ikigai with Malin Bjerkestig. So sign up for that too. And yeah, thank you so much, Andrea. Look forward to seeing you soon again.
Yes, thank you.